For a great cup of joe, there's one thing you should know. Your morning brew can also be playful. Buff Boy Brewing guys make the temperature rise, and you surely feel naughty when you swallow our coffee. If you want some real heat, give your mouth a fine treat. You will want some more, rest assured. Buff Boy Brewing, you can't get enough of.
It's time for The Scribble, your weekly fix of celebrity chats, bizarre stories in the news, and basic random chatter with best-selling author and syndicated radio host Jeremy Bradley. Make sure your seat is in the upright and locked position and your barf bag is securely in place. Here's Jeremy Bradley.
Hello everybody, Jeremy Bradley here. This is The Scribble. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Larson. I've said it several times before. We are how many weeks into doing it? We're over a year and a half into doing this podcast, and we still have the same introduction, but that is just the kind of cheapskate I am. Now, speaking of that wasn't even the planned segue, but I will tell you, with the long weekend upon us, the Labor Day weekend, I've got some ideas for how you can have a relatively cheap long weekend, and it's from my book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate. You can check it out at cheapskatebook.com. So we've got those tips coming up in just a little bit. And the celebrity phone, this is something that we do on the radio show, on our syndicated radio shows. But the celebrity phone is lighting up, and it's always a guest. I have no idea who it is. Typically, it's somebody who I at least know, because it would be very awkward to have somebody that I've never heard of and don't know anything about calling in and then putting me on the spot to talk to them, especially with no notes or anything like that. So generally, it's somebody that I don't want to even say fond of, because that's not necessarily the case. But definitely it's somebody who I've heard of, at least. So we're going to do that coming up in just a little bit. Again, that's a radio show thing, but we'll do it here on the podcast. And, remember, speaking of celebrities, entertainmentwrapup.com, that's our daily look at the ups and downs, the highs, the lows, mostly the dramatic-filled stories from the Hollywood world. Entertainmentwrapup.com if you have not checked out that. Now, I also want to remind you that we've got our celebrity interviews at speakfreecelebwatch.com. Speakfreecelebwatch. I'm just a link whore. That's all I'm doing. I'm just filling up the time with links of stuff to promote ourselves. Speakfreecelebwatch.com. Now, are you ready for this? It's Labor Day long weekend. September means that a lot of kids actually, I guess, went back to school at the end of, or middle to end of August, which is strange. When I was growing up, we didn't go back to school until the first week of September after the long weekend. And so it just definitely reminds you, it takes you back. The streets are less busy. I tend to take a lot of time off in the summer, so I'm walking the dogs out in the daytime and things like that. And it's just kind of weird. I don't like kids, first off. But it's just sort of strange to be walking down the street going, ooh, all these kids, they're supposed to be in school. What are they doing roaming the streets? It's just gross. So now there's just kind of this back to normalcy where it's like, it's daytime, it's only grown-ups now, we're good. But definitely the school year is something to look forward to, at least for parents anyway. But I was, the one thing that I liked, and this is where I'm a little bit different than, or I was different than most kids, was that I loved going school supply shopping. Now, the supplies these days, they've got to get, tablets, laptops, all those things. I liked going and getting pens and paper and a ruler and glue and crayons and all that stuff. I had a bit of a stationery obsession when I was growing up. I did. I loved office supplies. And so, hey, you know what, though? It served me well, because what ended up happening is I became an entrepreneur 15, 20 years later. So it worked out for me in the end. But definitely I had this thing with, markers and bulletin boards, and I had an office set up at home even when I was probably about 20 or 21. I did. I was kind of a weird kid. But that kid, like I said, turned into a best-selling author, nationally syndicated radio host, newspaper columnist, and everything else in between. So, all right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, as I said, the celebrity phone will be lighting up. It is a guest. I got no idea who it is, and we'll hear that right after this.
Isn't it crazy that you wait for payday, but before you know it, you're strapped for cash again? It's time to stop blowing your money and become a smart spender with the book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate, at cheapskatebook.com. Learn simple ways to cut costs at home every day and during special times of the year. Don't go broke at Christmas. Don't remortgage the house for a fancy vacation. The book is filled with tips to save you money throughout the year. Check out the best-selling book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate, at cheapskatebook.com or on Amazon and iTunes. Rewards.
The celebrity phone once again lighting up. I always love this part of the show. Always a surprise who it is. Hello, you're on the air.
Yeah, hi, this is Neve. I make a show called Catfish on MTV.
Oh, no. No, somebody's trying to pretend to be me online, right, Neve?
Oh, sorry, Johnny. I don't think anyone really would want to pretend to be you.
Oh, gee. Oh, so you just want to promote your show? Is that really what we're doing now? Jeez, all right.
I thought I was calling Katy Perry.
Good point. If you didn't see the show, we'll talk about that in a second. But no, that was a good zinger. Thanks for calling in, Neve. It's great to chat with you.
Hey, thanks, Jeremy. Nice to be here.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, we've been wanting the star of Catfish. I always figured we'd get Max, but it's great to have you nonetheless. So the new season, it's back on MTV. You mentioned Katy Perry. We've got to talk about this because the guy... I'll try to sum this up. A lesbian tricking a guy into thinking he was messaging Katy Perry, and then you flew across the world, basically, to meet... And then the guy still didn't believe it, even after you proved that it wasn't Katy Perry. Did I sum that up okay?
Yeah, I think that was pretty accurate. It's hard to even believe, in summary, that an adult, a 36-year-old man, would believe for 6 years that he was having a secret online relationship with the world's biggest pop star, but that's the story.
So, I mean, there's a part of you that you feel sorry for the guy, of course, because he's just so attached and in love. And then, we could tell from the reactions that you and Max had that it's like, come on, big guy, think about this. And then you almost kind of laugh at him too, don't you? Like, it's sad, though.
Well, I mean, what was particularly curious about this episode was Spencer, the guy we're talking about. He understood how ridiculous sounding his situation was. He was self-aware and even a little, concerned that telling people he was in a relationship with Katy Perry would sound ridiculous. I mean, we didn't have to explain to him how absurd it was. He understood that, and yet somehow he had completely been convinced and convinced himself that this was actually happening. And so, yeah, he had a sense of humor about it. He appreciated the absurdity of it, but he still was completely convinced, at least as far as we could tell, that he was, in fact, talking to Katy Perry.
Oh, God. So on a related note, I have been messaging Justin Bieber on Grindr, so I'm just wondering... Probably not him, though, right?
Oh, well, I've heard actually from a lot of guys that Justin Bieber is on Grindr, so... No, could be.
Oh, jeez. But so let's talk about some advice, though. We see the sleuthing tips every week. You guys, you do image searches, you look up phone numbers. So what are some red flags? Actually, let me see if I've kind of got a handle on it. So a person's profile page, if they're not tagged with other people, if they just only have selfies and no other kind of real life pictures, those would be red flags too, right? What else is there?
Yes, for sure. What else? Okay, well, I mean, the obvious ones in terms of communicating with them, if they can't video chat, if they can't send you a picture with some specific thing in it or their driver's license, that's obviously a red flag. But I mean, the biggest red flag really is if you're talking to someone, they live far away, and you're interested in making an effort to meet up with them, but they seem to always have an excuse not to. I mean, it's really the excuses, and they usually start off small. I'm sick, maybe I had a little car accident, or I have a family emergency, and then they get bigger. People get sick, sometimes people die, car accidents get worse, injuries get worse, and so if there's an escalation of excuses, then I think you're probably talking to someone who's avoiding meeting you because they're not who you think they are.
It's interesting because the messaging goes from can't wait to meet you, can't live without you, so then the other person finally has that opportunity okay, well, I'm going to come visit you, and now all of a sudden there's all these roadblocks and these hurdles. That should be a red flag. What about...
Right, and also, alternatively, a lot of people I find will get to a point where they've had enough, where they figure, okay, this person's probably lying to me, I'm going to walk away, at which point they say, hey, if you can't meet up with me, this is over, or I got to stop pursuing this. And if the person then gets very aggressive or defensive or turns the situation around to make you feel bad, like you're abandoning them or you're doing something wrong, that's another indication that they're messing with you.
Ever had something to get off your chest but never had the balls to say it? That's a load of crap. Speak Free with JB.com is exactly what you've been waiting for. Your chance to tell it like it is and not care what anybody else thinks. Have your say on issues of the day. Join newspaper and radio columnist Jeremy Bradley as he tells it like it is. Hundreds of thousands of people have stopped by, including some well-known celebrities who have had a chat with JB and speak candidly about what's really going on in the world. You can join them too. Have a rant or a rave. Be brave and head on over to www.speakfreewithjb.com now.
Who are the Kardashians feuding with now? What did that little thug Justin Bieber do this time? Who's getting hitched? And who's headed for Splitsville? Hear the latest celebrity news and gossip every day on Entertainment Wrap-Up. The good, the bad, the ugly, but mostly the ridiculously hilarious. It's all recapped in this daily segment at entertainmentwrapup.com. Have a laugh at the expense of the rich and famous when they take themselves way too seriously. It's 3 minutes of time-wasting fun at entertainmentwrapup.com. Check out Entertainment Wrap-Up at entertainmentwrapup.com. Brought to you by Speak Free Books.
Jeremy Bradley here, back talking with Neve from MTV's Catfish, another surprise guest. I do love that, chatting about the new season. I know you guys have also seen people, I guess, almost sort of making a business out of catfishing, and by that I mean getting money or things from people, right? You're sending money, you're buying them things and sending it. That happens quite a bit too, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. There's definitely a separation between the people who are online to scam and to cheat and to get money and things versus the sort of unintentional or accidental catfish who are really just lonely and looking for some sort of companionship, and it ends up becoming, a relationship. We don't generally deal with the scammers as much because they're often criminals, legit criminals, and they're not very easy to track down, and they certainly have no intention of appearing on television. So most of our show deals with the sort of lonely hearts and less the con artists.
Mm-hmm. And then another thing would be
there's definitely a business out there and a lot of money to be made preying on people's vulnerability and loneliness.
Do you find, what is the age range of people that reach out to the show? Is it mostly kind of young people, teens, 20s, maybe early 30s? Do you get anybody who's 40, 50, 60 maybe?
We do. We get for sure older people. This season we're definitely looking to help people a little bit older than the target demographic for MTV. This last guy was 36. Next week's episode is really interesting. It's sort of features a woman who's married, a little older, and I think it gets more interesting the older you get because people's lives have really developed. There are stakes. There's family involved. There's kids involved. There's jobs involved, and so the tension and the mystery and the truth comes at a much higher cost.
So let's swing it because there was a guy, and I'm sure you've heard this story by now. Ultimate catfish victim, waiting 10 days at an airport for his online girlfriend, even hospitalized. He sat there waiting so long he was hospitalized. You heard that story, right?
I did, yes.
Okay, so I got it. How long would you have waited? I have to know that first.
Well, this guy, I don't know the details that much, but it sounds like for sure he was getting catfished, although now I feel like I heard that perhaps the woman was who she said she was, but he was sort of aggressive in terms of deciding he was just going to show up without her agreeing that he would show up. So I'm not sure who was or wasn't at fault, but this guy definitely went out on a limb, flew across the world, and I guess got there and emailed her and said, "Hey, I'm here." I don't know why she didn't meet up with him, but I definitely would not have waited that long. I mean, I think, maybe I would have stayed one night over just in case she couldn't meet up with me that day, but perhaps, the next day she was available. But I don't think I would have waited much longer than I don't know, 12 to 24 hours.
Oh, I know exactly what you would have done. You would have got on your computer, you would have tried to research where she lives, you would have tried to track her down. I think that's what Neve would have done, I'm fairly certain. No?
Well, I sure as hell would have left the airport and seen the sights. I mean, I'm not gonna fly to Tokyo or wherever it was and just sit in the airport for 10 days. I'm gonna go look around, at least make a trip out of it.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Meet somebody new. There you are. You've already got the flowers. You're sitting at the airport. Find somebody else. Jeez. We've got to wrap this up, but I made an observation the other week during the season premiere. When you guys have you're sitting at the desk and the camera is pointing up at you two, Max kind of looks like Jay Leno. Has anybody ever said that?
Yeah, he does a little bit. I'm not sure if anyone's ever pointed that out or not, but he got a little bit of the Jay.
Kind of just, I mean, I'm not making fun. It's not an insult. I'm just saying, like, for a brief glimpse, I was kind of like, whoa. Sort of like, the hair and then the facial structure. Anyway, just my observation. So, we'll be watching. It's Wednesday nights then on MTV, right?
That's right. Wednesdays at 10.
All right. Well, thanks so much for chatting. Well, thanks for surprising me, Neve. I do appreciate you calling in.
My pleasure.
And send our regards to Max, of course.
I will.
All right. Thanks so much.
It's never too early to start thinking about your next holiday. Have you checked out Mexico recently? From tequila tasting, swimming with horses, to ziplining through the jungle and watching whales and dolphins in their natural habitat, Puerto Vallarta has it all. Visit mexico.jbonair.com to see all the fun PV has to offer. That's at mexico.jbonair.com for hundreds of photos, interviews, and videos from around the tourist hotspot. Check out mexico.jbonair.com for all the fun. That's mexico.jbonair.com.
Back here on The Scribble. Remember to follow us on Twitter at The Scribble Show, at The Scribble Show. I want to go back to something that we were talking about with Neve there from Catfish. Is social media, great place to meet people or reunite even with people. Funny story for you before I get into what I was actually going to tell you, a little bit scatterbrained. I get shaken up when we do those celebrity segments, or the surprise segment anyway. Facebook, I spend maybe like 5 minutes a day on Facebook. I don't scroll through everybody because I don't care what you're doing. And so you give those suggestions as to who you might know, and sure enough, believe it or not, somebody that I know from about 15 years ago, I've got no ties to them on social media whatsoever. Ever. It was like AOL chat rooms is what it was. I was probably about maybe 16, 17 years old. So we're going, 20-some years. And all of a sudden, Facebook suggests that I might know this person. And sure enough, the name, it was a very unique name. That's how I remembered it. And I was like, it has to be that. So I go and sure enough, look at the person's page. And it's the person from California with whom I chatted back in the day on AOL. And this is before the days of like webcams and all those things, so you just had to rely on pictures back and forth. But get this, because I'm a pack rat and I still have like every file from my computer when I lived with my parents, I actually found in, I guess, archives, whatever you want to call it, pictures of this person from back in the day. And this was before the days of catfish. Maybe people were catfishing then, I don't really know. And it certainly wasn't that you were on AOL chat rooms. It was just fascinating that you could write to people back and forth from another side of the world. And so, believe it or not, I still had pictures of this person from that long ago. And so we strike up conversation, and then I go and just out of nowhere randomly send a picture from back in the day and say, do you remember me? Like, this is... And it was fascinating. So I had that reconnection on Facebook. Now, back to what I was about to talk about when Neve was on. We only had him for a few minutes, so we had to get going. But Facebook, it seems like, has become almost like a big personals ad, a dating website. Because you have the people that add you. And given what I do for a living, it's not uncommon for random people to add me. And that's cool because I do enjoy getting to know others from anywhere around the world. And... it's weird that, so somebody will say hi to me. I write back hi to them. Where are you from? I tell them where I'm from. You single? So it's become this where it's not even about, hey, I heard you on the radio. Hey, I saw your column in the newspaper. Hey, I read your book. Anything like that. It's, hi, how are you? Where are you from? Are you single? And it's happened It's actually happened quite a bit, and I don't really know exactly why, as I'm getting, believe it or not, a notice from Facebook right now on my phone. By the way, if you're going to be doing broadcasting, put your phone on silent so that it doesn't give you away. But anyway, I don't get why it is, and because we have so many other channels that you can meet people. I still believe that your soulmate could be right around the corner, could be working at the grocery store, could be, whatever. But at the same time, I'm also one of those people who believes that your soulmate could be halfway around the world and that you have to take a chance if you want to go and meet them, if you believe that they're for you. But obviously, given what we see on Catfish, you might want to really make sure you know that person before going ahead. Like that guy, 10 days at the airport. Sad story for that guy. I think we talked about that a few weeks ago here on the show, but definitely you feel bad for a guy like that because he was truly, I believe anyway, if you're going to spend that much time waiting for somebody, you're committed. I mean, or you should be anyway, but it's just he was there for love is what it seemed like. Why else would he have waited there? And like Neve said, you know what, I'm going to go and see the town, I'm going to go and enjoy myself, which is, yes, a good point. But at the same time, you feel bad for the guy because he's obviously that into this person that he believes that they can make something of it, that he's flying around, and then he's going to wait that long and then hospitalized nonetheless. We should follow up with him. I want to see if we can try to track him down, although he's old news in the big grand scheme of things. Coming up, we're going to do a cheapskate checkpoint because my book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate, is a spin-off of my best-selling book, The Official Guide to Being a Winnipeg Cheapskate, featured every week in the Winnipeg Free Press. And so I've got some tips as Labor Day weekend is here right now. Happy Labor Day weekend, by the way. Ironically, that I'm working during Labor Day weekend. We have some ways that if you're just going to be staying at home and hanging out in the yard with the kids, whatever it is, some ideas if you have not already planned your long weekend. And that's the thing, is that I think people get so caught up, and I've spent a lot of time in Hollywood, like the best weekend is where you're going and blowing a bunch of money and you're partying it up and you're out for an expensive dinner, you're out a night on the town of dancing, expensive drinks and all that other stuff. But really, some of the best times you can have are at home when you're just being creative, even if it's by yourself, with your partner, with a family, whatever it is. There's lots of things that you can do. I wouldn't suggest doing it every weekend, but if you're creative enough, you can have fun with it, and it's a really good time. So sometimes it's just great to lay low, not spend very much, and just have a good time. So some of those tips will be coming up when we do another Cheapskate Checkpoint. We're going to continue talking about relationships in the weeks to come here on the show, because again, social media is everywhere, and it seems like despite the fear of most relationships ending in divorce, is it more than 50% now, I think is what they're saying, that, or most marriages, ending up in divorce, that we're doing something wrong as a society. And it could very well be these selfies and just the whole idea of people posting pictures and personal ads and rotating their pictures like every couple of days. And so my opinion on this is that you're so desperately wanting to attract somebody based on that first visual, what you look like. But then at the same time, do you really feel good that they're only messaging you because of what you look like? For me, that wouldn't be very fulfilling. Maybe that's just me. But at the same time, we have this expectation where we can just scroll through hundreds of people and it's not even very personal anymore. Despite the name personal ads, it's really not, because you're now just one of 100. And so I'm going to message you, but there's also 15 other people throwing themselves at you. And it becomes a People's Choice Awards sort of setup. And I don't know that that's the right way to look at a relationship. So anyway, that's just my thoughts. Send me an email, tell me what you think. live@jbonair.com is the email address. live@jbonair.com.
Cheapskate Checkpoint on the Scribble, brought to you by cheapskatebook.com. If you're a stupid spender, become a genius saver at cheapskatebook.com. Here's best-selling tight-ass Jeremy Bradley.
You freak.
It is the first long weekend of the summer, and with gas prices traditionally soaring this time of year, it could either make for a really expensive weekend or a weekend spent close to home. Remember, money doesn't always make a weekend. There are plenty of things to do on a long weekend that don't have to cost you anything. In fact, you might even be able to make some money. You're stuck at home because you don't want to fill up the tank, and with summer weather happening, there's no better time to have a garage sale. Or get crafty. We'll have chapters about that later in the book. Gather some old magazines and find some colorful pictures in them and make a collage of photographs. One idea, thanks to a school project from back in the day, is accordion folding a page and tying it in the middle to make a butterfly. When you are done, set up a table outside and sell your art. There's nothing like a day at the beach on a hot day. Bring the beach to your yard. Find some large garbage bags, cut them up, and get out the garden hose. You'd be surprised how much fun slipping and sliding in the backyard can be. Add some dish soap for extra slip. Another tip is to get some foaming bath gel and get the bubbles flying and have a foam party. Now, one safety tip, though, remove twigs and branches to avoid cuts and scratches. Without the expense of filling up the propane barbecue, use a fire pit and roast some potatoes and other vegetables. Earlier, you collected those twigs and branches from the yard. They are needed to start your fire. With it becoming increasingly easier to sit around and do nothing, the nice weather is a perfect excuse to get out and be active. Walk the dog, take the kids to the park, better yet, get a pedometer and track your travels. It doesn't have to be a long walk, just doing chores around the house will add up your steps. You might be able to clock 5 miles in a day and not even realize it. The next day, try log 6 miles. After getting a little too much sun, you retreat inside for some shade. You remember there's that closet of old photos, and a walk down memory lane is just what you need while sipping on a cool drink. After the picture recap, it's not a bad idea to go through the digital camera memory cards and create a slideshow or mark pictures for printing to create an updated album. Not that you have to be the crafty type, but one idea for a creative photo album is placing 2 similar pictures side by side. That old snapshot of Aunt Greta at a wedding in the 1970s, and the updated snapshot of Aunt Greta at a wedding last year. It's interesting to see how people change. What was with that hair? Sure, it might be a laugh at Aunt Greta's expense, but it is a good time nonetheless. Have you ever surfed YouTube for a specific video but then sidetracked by related matches and other previews shown on the results page? It happens to me all the time, and it can lead to hours of distraction. Whether it's watching clips of classic TV shows or newscast bloopers or funny pet moments, you can end up viewing a couple dozen videos before realizing you still haven't watched the initial clip that you were searching for. Either way, distracted or not, you still kept yourself entertained, and it killed a bit of time, and it didn't cost you anything. Cheaper than renting a movie on pay-per-view, the internet can be a wonderful place and a great source of entertainment. These are just a few of the ideas to keep your weekend enjoyable. Have a cheap, long weekend. That's not a bad thing.
Isn't it crazy that you wait for payday, but before you know it, you're strapped for cash again? It's time to stop blowing your money and become a smart spender with the book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate at cheapskatebook.com. Learn simple ways to cut costs at home every day and during special times of the year. Don't go broke at Christmas. Don't remortgage the house for a fancy vacation. The book is filled with tips to save you money throughout the year. Check out the best-selling book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate at cheapskatebook.com or on Amazon and iTunes.
We hear you chirping. Get scribbling. Tweet up the Scribble at The Scribble Show. Join the discussion with Jeremy Bradley. It's all going down right now on Twitter at The Scribble Show and at thescribbleshow.com.
That's right, we are on the Twitter, as my dad would say, at The Scribble Show. There's so many social media platforms. That's sort of been the theme today as I've gone on about dating and meeting people and everything like that. It is almost like you end up having to spend more time than you would at your full-time job, which is for a lot of people, 37 and a half, 40, 35 hours a week, whatever it is. There's so many platforms that I just have no interest in keeping up. So the best I can do is my own Twitter at SFCelebWatch. SF is in Speak Free Celeb Watch, SFCelebWatch. And even then, I don't know. I feel like people need to get a life. And yes, it is one great thing to be able to link people and meet people and all that other stuff, but I have no desire to live behind a screen with my eyes, just focused on a phone or a computer or whatever it is. I'm still one of those old traditional folks that, just a weekend out at the lake, sitting on the beach, no phone, no technology. I was out visiting my parents at their cottage not too long ago, and they are not that far from, there's a store, I guess, kind of a little ways away from them, and they can pick up Wi-Fi. They just discovered they can pick up Wi-Fi from their spot. And once my dad realized that, he was on his iPad, he was, just totally glued to his technology at that point. And I said to my mom, yeah, you've just lost your husband to Wi-Fi. This is supposed to be a place where you can go, get away from everything, escape, and, he's discovered technology out there. So Yeah. Anyway, feel free, speaking of technology, to email me. live@jbonair.com is the email address, live@jbonair.com. As I mentioned, we're going to be talking relationships in the weeks to come, and the Kentucky Headhunters have a very privileged honor from Billboard, Billboard Music and the charts and all that other stuff. So we have one of the guys from the group coming up on the show in the next week or so as well. So that's something really cool. I love talking with legendary music artists and groups just to hear their input about the music industry, where it is, where it's headed, and what it was like back in the day. Do they prefer it back then? And, really, what is the state of music these days? So chatting with Kentucky Headhunters. That's in the weeks to come here on The Scribble. Remember, we're on SoundCloud and iTunes and at thescribbleshow.com. My name is Jeremy Bradley. Thank you so much for joining us and all your support over the past however many weeks, 80-some weeks. I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.
Want more Scribble? Check out thescribbleshow.com for past shows, celebrity interviews, cheapskate tips, and more. That's at thescribbleshow.com and on Twitter at The Scribble Show. The Scribble is a speak-free media presentation.
If you want some real heat,